Coming up on this edition of Jerusalem Dateline, Benjamin Netanyahu in the U.S. seeking bipartisan support for Israel. What are his goals and what's at stake? And Dr. Michael Widlanski articulating the grim realities of war 9 months after October 7th. Plus, going on offense against anti-Semitism on U.S. college campuses and lifting up prayers for a modern miracle at the Western Wall. All this and more coming up on this edition of Jerusalem Dateline.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. Yesterday, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu left for Washington, D.C. for meetings with President Joe Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, and to deliver a speech on Wednesday before a joint session of Congress. He leaves as Israel fights a seven-front war for survival and heads to a city filled with political uncertainty.
Netanyahu explained one of his main goals as he heads to Washington.
I will seek to anchor the bipartisan support that is so important for Israel. And I will tell my friends on both sides of the aisle that regardless who the American people choose as their next president, Israel remains America's indispensable and strong ally in the Middle East.
Netanyahu's departure comes following an Israeli attack on a major port Saturday in Yemen, after the Iranian-backed Houthis fired a drone on Friday into the heart of Tel Aviv. The Israeli strike was called Operation Outstretched Arm, and it destroyed a key fuel depot and strategic port used by Iran to provide supplies for the Houthis. The IDF also made a point that the distance from Israel to Yemen is greater than the distance to Iran, sending a message that Iran's nuclear facilities are within its range. Iran, the Houthis, and Hezbollah all promised retaliation after the strike. Netanyahu said it was time to respond after the Houthis launched hundreds of ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drones against Israel and affected one of the most important waterways in the world.
For over half a year, the Houthis have not only attacked Israel, they've also targeted the ships of dozens of countries traversing the Bab el-Mandeb Straits. This is a maritime corridor through which some 30% of the world's maritime commerce flows.
And on Sunday, the IDF confirmed a major victory in its war against Hamas, the death of Mohammed Deif, the #2 leader of the terrorist group in Gaza. Israel had bombed Deif and his top aide after weeks of surveillance. His death represents a major blow to Hamas, since Deif masterminded the October 7th massacre and built Hamas into a military force. Some experts say the elimination of Deif represents an even bigger blow to Hamas than would be the death of Yahya Sinwar. But Israel took a hit on the international legal front Friday, when the International Court of Justice in The Hague ruled that Israel's presence in the West Bank, biblical Judea and Samaria, is illegal. The non-binding ruling states that Israel has occupied Palestinian territory since 1967, and it is obligated to end its presence in the territory as rapidly as possible. The court also says Israel should provide reparations for any damage caused by its wrongful acts. Netanyahu and other Israeli leaders denounced the ruling. The prime minister said, "The Jewish people are not occupiers in their own land, not in our eternal capital, Jerusalem, not in the land of our ancestors in Judea and Samaria. No false decision in The Hague will distort this historical truth."
The meetings between Benjamin Netanyahu and President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris have been postponed until Thursday. Those key meetings are now scheduled the day after Netanyahu's address to a joint session of Congress. Here's the latest.
In Washington, Netanyahu met with families of some of the hostages.
We're determined to bring them all back. The conditions to bring them back are ripening, for the simple reason that we're putting very, very strong pressure on Hamas. We're seeing a certain change, and I think this change will grow. We intend to do it. This is a war objective.
Tragically, the IDF announced 2 more hostages were confirmed murdered by Hamas in captivity. Former U.S. Ambassador to Israel David Friedman sat down with CBN News to talk about what Netanyahu wants to accomplish in the speech and in Washington.
The world really hasn't heard from the one person whose job it is to defend the state of Israel and to win this war, and that's Prime Minister Netanyahu. What he's trying to accomplish on this extremely large stage, maybe the biggest stage in the world, is to really explain Israel's position, explain what happened to Israel on October 7th, the trauma this inflicted on the Jewish state, the Jewish people, the inhabitants of Israel, how Israel has done its best to minimize civilian casualties, but how Israel views this as an existential battle where victory is the only option. And I think, he is uniquely qualified to make that case.
The Times of Israel reports Netanyahu's meeting with President Biden may now take place Thursday instead of today because of the president's COVID diagnosis. Netanyahu is also expected to meet at some point with Vice President Harris, expected to be the Democrats' presidential nominee. And he may meet with the Republican nominee, former President Donald Trump. With all of the changes going on among Democrats, Netanyahu has to navigate a difficult political landscape.
It is a highly charged, time in American politics right now, and he'll try to thread that needle in a way where he can check in, offer his good wishes, make the case for Israel, but try not to provoke, the kind of political responses that we see too often here at this time. So it's a tough job. It's a needle threading job but he's pretty good at that. He's done it before.
On his departure from Israel, Netanyahu said he wants to emphasize the bond between the two nations.
In this time of war and uncertainty, it's important that Israel's enemies know that America and Israel stand together today, tomorrow, and always. Thank you.
Here with me to talk more about Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's visit to Washington is CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl. Julie, why is this visit so important?
Well, I think it's probably more important in the international arena than it means to Israelis here. I think it's very important for Netanyahu that he goes and speaks with his best friend, basically Israel's best friend in the world, at this. It's a critical juncture. Israel's been at war for more than 9 months. They seem to be wrapping up in Gaza. They want to deal with Lebanon. You've got, 80,000 to 100,000 Israelis evacuated from their homes. Kids are going to be trying to go back to school soon. It's a complicated situation.
Yeah. Do you think there's a sense that people really don't understand that Israel is at war? We talked with Michael Widlanski about that, and I think he wants to get across the message that people really need to realize Israel's at war.
Yeah, I think, Israelis are I don't want to use the word notorious, but, they're very much known for picking up and resilience and going on, and that's what they're doing. But it's very difficult. It has impacted the economy. It has impacted daily life. Like I said, the schools, a lot of things. So I think Netanyahu is really wanting to make a point, and in doing so, he is kind of bypassing. He is going to meet with Biden and Kamala Harris, but he's going to Congress. And speaking from Congress, anybody can see exactly what he says live or later. Plus he's bypassing the media. He can speak to these people. I think it's really critical, right, at this point, that he maintains bipartisan support. I mean, until recently, it was always just a known bipartisan issue. So Israel, the state of Israel, and support for Israel, because Israel really is still the only democracy in the Middle East. It's really standing for Judeo-Christian values in an area where those are not the values.
It reminds me a little bit of the 2015 speech when he went there. He was talking about the Iranian nuclear deal, and he's the one here in. He sets the record of any foreign leader speaking to a joint session of Congress, actually passing Winston Churchill. How do you think it's going to be received here in Israel, the speech?
Well, I think it'll kind of depend on what he talks about. Everybody's really big on getting the hostages back. And one press release said, if he doesn't start off by saying we reached a deal, then forget it. But I don't think that's the case. So anyway, but I think that's there. A lot of people are thinking about the hostages. But I think also people are eager to see how America is going to respond to what he says.
And we'll mention it later, but It's also, this day is the beginning of the fast of Tammuz. Very difficult time for the people of Israel. And why is that so important? And how can people pray?
Well, I think really, you know, like you said, this is 3 weeks of mourning where many, many bad things happened to Jewish people throughout history. The destruction of the first and second temples, the edict to get out of Spain, different things. And, you know, I think people really need to pray that it won't be a time of destruction of any sort for Israel, and not another reason to mourn, but that God will turn something to good during this time.
Great time to pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
It is.
Julie, appreciate your insight analysis. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Coming up, a candid assessment of how Israel is doing after 9 months of war from Dr. Michael Widlanski.
I spoke recently with Middle East analyst Dr. Michael Widlanski about the stance he thought Benjamin Netanyahu should take during his trip to Washington. Dr. Widlanski didn't mince words. Michael Widlanski, great to be with you again. You're wearing a special shirt. Tell us why.
Well, it's a safari shirt. I call it battle dress, not our usual tie and jacket. You know, we usually come more formal. And the reason is because we're at war. We're literally at war. Last night, a bomb landed in Tel Aviv near our apartment, less than 100 feet from our apartment, and a man was killed. And it was an Iranian bomb built by Iran, sent from Yemen. And in this country, we've been at war for 9 months on 4 or 5 different fronts: Gaza, Lebanon, Yemen, Iran itself sending weapons against us. And we've been fighting with our hands tied together at the behest of the President of the United States, who says, we don't want you to kill innocent people. In the meantime, half our country is on pins and needles. The north is uninhabited. The south is uninhabited. And all around the country, people are terrified. I was supposed to go to a wedding this morning in the Golan Heights. I didn't go because the roads aren't safe, because they're being tracked by Hezbollah gunners in Lebanon. And people are acting as if we sought this war. We didn't seek out this war. We're defending ourselves against the invasion of the body snatchers. And that's what Hamas is. That's what Hezbollah is. And people are saying, well, you can fight, but use the Marquis of Queensberry rules. Well, that's wrong. Sorry, I'm excited.
No, I understand. Do you think there's a sense in the West, in the U.S., that they don't understand exactly what Israel is facing right now?
They don't understand because we don't go crazy. If we went crazy after they butchered babies and women and old men on October 7th, if we went crazy and killed 100,000 in Gaza in 2 days, they'd understand. Instead, we tried to fight like a championship boxer, using jabs and trying very hard not to kill people who weren't immediately involved in the fighting. That doesn't mean they weren't involved. The whole Gaza community was involved. It was like fighting Sodom and Gomorrah. Nobody there was innocent. They all hid terrorist arms in their buildings, in their apartments. To this day, by the way, their clinics and their hospitals were used as arms depots. They put up terrorists in their houses, and they sequestered people who were kidnapped from Israel in their homes. Teachers from the United Nations, lawyers from the United Nations. That's the Gaza community. Mm-hmm. And because we didn't go crazy, people say, maybe you're not really at war.
Do you think that the drone strike in Tel Aviv marks a changing point? Because Tel Aviv, for much of the war, has been, I wouldn't say off limits, but they haven't been struck. Does this make a difference, what happened last night?
I think that the Iranians, through their proxies, and they have 3 or 4 different proxies. They have Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthi mountain people from Yemen in Yemen. They're all fighting for Iran. And Iran is trying to send a message. What they're basically saying is, better be careful, or there'll be a wider conflict. And what Netanyahu has to say is, fellas, We're not playing games. These are our lives. These are our people. People were butchered. People were kidnapped. People are continued hostages. The whole country is being held hostage. The northern third of the country is depopulated. The bottom quarter of the country is depopulated. We are being held hostage. And then The Hague and the United Nations, which is ruled by authoritarian countries, tribal countries, are giving us lectures on democracy? They're giving us lectures on how to fight? We fought these people before. And we got up off of their heads and off of their shoulders and said, now we'll live in peace. Well, according to tribal rules, after somebody tries to kill you, you finish him off. And maybe that's what we should do.
Well, I appreciate your analysis and perspective. And I think a lot of people in the U.S. Need to know exactly how Israelis are feeling right now. Michael Widlanski, great to be with you.
Thank you very much.
Up next, going on the offense legally against anti-Semitism on U.S. campuses.
After decades of pro-Hamas indoctrination on U.S. campuses and outright support of the massacre on October 7th, students and lawyers are starting to push back. Nitsana Darshan-Leitner from the Israel Law Center is suing the U.S. organization Students for Justice in Palestine, or SJP. She recently filed a mass lawsuit against SJP on behalf of Israeli victims of terror.
And our lawsuit claims that this organization, SJP, is providing services to Hamas, which Hamas cannot without. It spreads their propaganda, it spreads their ideology, it recruits people to join Hamas and to encourage Hamas to continue and do to Israel what they did in October 7. And therefore, it's a violation of the Anti-Terrorism Act. This American law prohibits any American organization to provide any sort of material support to a designated organization. And in such, if they do violate this law, they are responsible for the damages that Hamas was responsible for, meaning those October 7th victims.
Yeah. How closely coordinated was this group, Students for Justice in Palestine, and Hamas, either on, before, or during, or after October 7th?
For almost a decade, Students for Justice in Palestine is protesting against Israelis and serves as a voice for all the terror organizations against Israel, including Hamas, including Islamic Jihad, including the Popular Front for Palestine. But on October 7th, it showed that it's really directly to Hamas. Calls to genocide the Jews, calls to from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, encouraging students to act violently against Jews in the campuses, terrorizing and intimidating the students in the campuses, doing exactly what Hamas is doing to the people in Israel. And therefore, we prove in many, many occasions how the students that are leading SJPs are actually so close with Hamas, not personally. We don't have any proof that they met with Hamas representatives or being involved with Hamas actions, but we have proofs that for all this time, for many, many years, and furthermore, after October 7th, SJP is actually the student arm of Hamas.
One student pushing back on institutionalized anti-Semitism on campus is Shabbos Kestenbaum, who explained the reasons for his lawsuit against Harvard at the recent Republican convention.
My problem with Harvard is not its liberalism, but its illiberalism. Too often, students at Harvard are taught not how to think, but what to think. I found myself immersed in a culture that is anti-Western, that is anti-American, and that is anti-Semitic. After October 7th, the world finally saw what I and so many Jewish students across this country experienced almost every day. When I planted 1,200 Israeli and American flags on campus, they were all vandalized within 24 hours. I was harassed by my peers merely for being a Jew and have received countless death threats online. Students and professors have openly called for new Hamas-style attacks against the United States. And perhaps most damning, when Hamas terrorists butchered 45 American citizens on October 7th, when they took 12 Americans hostage, Harvard refused to immediately and unequivocally condemn this atrocity.
Still ahead, offering thanks at the Western Wall for a modern-day miracle. When we come back.
Thank you for watching Jerusalem Dateline. We're committed to providing you with unbiased reporting from the Holy Land. Through weekly broadcasts, podcasts, and online media, our vision is to reach millions around the globe with the true story of what's happening in Israel and the Middle East, all from a biblical and prophetic perspective. This is a big vision and is only made possible by the generous support of people like you.
Call us toll-free at 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com/Jerusalem Dateline and make a donation that will help spread the light of truth about Israel throughout the world.
Many people in America believe the attempted assassination of President Trump was a miracle. Many Israelis do also, and that's why one man wanted to give thanks at one of the holiest places in all of Jerusalem, the Western Wall.
James Rosenberg asked these fellow Jewish worshipers at the Western Wall to join him in reciting Psalm 100 on behalf of President Trump.
And this is a psalm that is dedicated to being thankful to God for something that happens that you want to be thankful for.
Rosenberg says what they did at the wall and what happened to President Trump transcended politics.
The issue about what we said was there was a miracle. There was a miracle that happened, a big miracle. And Mr. Trump knows it, and his followers know it, and people all around him know that there was a miracle there. If that bullet had gone a quarter of a centimeter to the other side, he'd be gone, and he knows that.
They recited the psalm on behalf of the former president.
So the way we look at things, when a person has a miracle, they have to be thankful. And I, in my saying that chapter of the Psalms, was acting on behalf of Mr. Trump because he has an obligation to be thankful and to say it at the most important place in the world, which is right over there.
Rosenberg says miracles like what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, affect the nations and Israel.
Once we recognize that something's a miracle, we recognize that for the nation of Israel, miracles are our family business. For 4,000 years, we've been experiencing miracles. Sometimes we accept it. Sometimes we go, we're not interested. But there are miracles nonetheless. And so, how to process miracles and how to deal with miracles is our business here in Israel. This is the nation of Israel and the land of Israel. And what's very important to understand is when we are thankful for the miracles that happen in the world, we bring on the redemption. And the redemption of Israel is the redemption of the whole world.
Psalm 100 says, a song of thanks, shout for joy to God, all the earth. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come before him with joyful songs. Know that God is the Lord. He made us, and we are his. We are his people, the sheep of his pasture. Come to his gates with thanksgiving, and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him, and bless his name.
כי טוב אדוני לעולם חסדו ועדו ודו אמונתו.
It's a great story. Well, that's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on social media, and you can access CBN content through our CBN News and other CBN apps. And please continue to pray for Israel. Today begins a 3-week period of mourning for the Jewish people, when they remember the destructions of the first and second Jewish temples and many other calamities for the Jewish people throughout history. So please pray for their protection. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.